Hey guys, how's it going? This is the Pyrogunner, and welcome to a video talking about the next infamous game. So first, I just want to say that I am working on my review of Infamous First Light, and it'll be uploaded sometime soon, but by soon, I don't mean soon, I mean kinda soon, but not really soon, but kind of, but soon. So, yeah, if you get what I mean by that, which you probably don't. I don't even know what I mean by that. So this video isn't going to be ideas for what the next Infamous game will be. It is saying what, in my opinion, would make this game a really good game. And whatever game this game is, whether it's Infamous Second Son 2, or if it's Infamous 3, or if it's some new thing or whatever, that doesn't even matter for this video. Also, it should be obvious, but there are a few spoilers from the other Infamous games in this video. So first, I am going to talk about the story. The next Infamous game definitely needs to have a better story. Second Son's story never really mattered to me as much as getting new powers. And what originally made me an Infamous fan was some things in the first game. I really liked the story and the mysterious tone. The powers fit perfectly with the city, and the powers didn't stand out too much. They were really just a way of telling an interesting story while the player experienced the thrill of having these superhuman abilities. Also, I really liked the comic cutscenes, the atmosphere of Empire City, and how it felt like a living city, and it was just so cool. And Zeke, who is a character who had almost the only comic relief in the game, but was also a very serious character at times. So that is what got me into Infamous in the first place, and I would like it if the next game could maybe feel a bit more like that. But I think that the most important thing that will determine almost everything else in this next Infamous game is karma. So if you're watching this video, you probably know what karma is, but if you don't, it is the moral choice system that has been in the Infamous games, and it determines whether you are good or evil. It is set up with two different sides and different levels of being good and evil, and you are supposed to try to reach the maximum level of whichever one you're trying to do. But one major problem with this is that if you are playing as a good guy, but one of the choices that you make is an evil choice, then that is going to punish you for making that choice. You will possibly lose some upgrades that you got, and it'll make it harder to level up to be evil since you have been being good so far. So you really have to either pick a good or evil and then just stick with that. And because of that, you aren't really making your own choices along the way. You're just doing things so that the game doesn't take away some stuff that you got. Now, this karma system feels very unnatural. That's just not how choices work in real life, and there's no exact definition of what morality is and what's good and what's evil. So I think that the next game shouldn't have good and evil paths. And I think that whenever the player makes a choice, they should feel free to choose what they actually want to choose and not make a choice just because they don't want to lose some upgrades. So for this new moral choice system in the next Infamous game, making a certain choice could open up options for upgrades and powers that wouldn't be available with any other choice, and I think that that would also add a lot of replayability to the game, which is a very good thing. The choices need to feel more meaningful and impact the story dramatically, I think, because most of the choices in the past Infamous games haven't really done much to the story at all. It just changes how something happens in the game, but not what happens. Now, having multiple endings to this game could be really bad if you're trying to make a sequel, but I think that it's way more important to just focus on making a really good game than to worry about if there can be a sequel to the game. I think that all of the choices in this game should be natural and shouldn't be made to follow a certain moral path, and instead the morality should be uncertain and choices should have a bigger impact on the gameplay and the story. One other option for the game is not having karma at all, but I think that's very unlikely that they do that, and that it would be better to have a brand new choice system that's much better than the karma system than to not have any choices at all, because choices are kind of a big thing in the Infamous series. Now, to talk more about the story of the game, so let's first talk about the protagonist. I think that when there are choices in a game, then it is very important for the player to feel like they are that main character that they are playing as, and that they aren't just simply controlling him or her. I think that the protagonist should start out as a very plain and simple character that you really don't know much about, and he or she doesn't really have any predetermined characteristics. But as you make choices, that changes the character and makes him a much more stronger and more complex character, and your choices really form who that character is going to be. And then by the end of the game, that character really is like his or her own character, and isn't just a plain simple person. That is what I feel would really make a very good protagonist for this kind of a game. But there also needs to be strong supporting characters. And to have strong supporting characters, especially in a video game, the player has to be able to interact with these characters and form strong emotional connections with each one, whether this is trust or hate or fear or love or whatever it is. Also, it would make a lot of sense if the choices that you have to make in this game is driven by the supporting characters and how you feel about them. And another thing that this game really needs is a good antagonist. Kessler from the first Infamous game is such a good antagonist because of how interesting he is. And once we find out about his motives, it is questionable whether he is actually the main villain or the main hero in the game. Which, that right there once again proves that morality isn't so straightforward and that it's very complex and it's not just straight up good or evil, two sides black and white like that. So in this next Infamous game, the antagonist definitely needs to have a very good motive that makes a lot of sense, which the player may even end up agreeing with and joining them later in the game. But overall with the characters, they just need to act like humans. That is the best thing to make characters, and it makes them very, very believable. Like, just look at The Last of Us with those characters. Like, all of those characters are so believable and they act so much like a human would that it just feels so real. Also, there definitely needs to be a more complex story than there was in Second Son, and there should be plot twists like there was in Infamous 1, but the plot twists shouldn't be obvious that they're going to happen. They shouldn't be predictable, but at the same time they should make sense when they do happen. And there shouldn't be plot twists in this game just for the sake of having a plot twist. So for some themes of this story of how it could go, one thing that I don't want is conduit racism. This has basically been a theme that was in Infamous 2, and then it was also in Infamous Second Son, and by now this is just getting old. Stop putting the conduit racism thing, which is basically what it is in these games. It's not that it's a bad theme, it's just it's already been used so much that it's just really old by now. I think that this game should present debatable questions but not give definite answers to them, and just make the player basically decide through the choices that they end up making in the game what their answer is to it. And this game definitely needs to be longer than Second Son was. The length of the game really has to work with the story, so there's not any like exact amount of time that this game has to take, but my suggestion would be maybe like 12 to 15 hours long for only doing the story missions, but just make sure that it fits well with the story. So that means like not making it feel too short, and also not making it drag on and feel like it's way too long for what it should be. So now that we really talked about the story pretty much, I am going to be talking more about gameplay in the next part of this video. So the first question is, should it be an open world game? And the only reason that I ask this question is because in the last part of Infamous First Light, it is not an open world game, and I thought that that actually worked kind of well. And I'm not going to say whether this game should be open world or not, because it should really just be depending on what the story is, and whether or not the story should stay in one main location, like one city, or if it should be more like a journey or something, or if it goes more like all across the country or something like that. But this game will probably be open world just because all of the other Infamous games are, so I am going to talk about this game as if it would be an open world game. So the size of the map or the city for this game, I think that the city should be bigger than it has been in the past games, which the size of the city and how big the city feels is totally dependent on how fast you can travel across the city. And I feel like, especially in Second Son, with your powers that can just move extremely fast, that city ended up feeling way too small. Also, this city has to feel alive. I think that the civilians need much better AI, and very many little things can be done to make them feel more like real people. Things such as getting in and out of cars and trains, and not just getting scared when you shoot your powers and stuff, and not having this simple sort of AI that they have had for the other games. And just like the characters in this game, if this city is going to feel alive and if it's going to feel real, then the civilians need to make human-like choices based on how they see you and what you do to them and stuff like that. I'm not sure if the PlayStation 4 is capable of doing this, but if it is, then I would like there to be many civilians in the game who each have their own character model. This way, the civilians wouldn't just be randomly spawned in NPCs. Each civilian could actually be their own person and could change based on your interactions with them. Now, I think of this being sort of like in the game Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, which I haven't actually played yet, but there's something in that game called the Nemesis system, and that is when you interact or like fight with certain orcs, or if they kill you or if you kill them, then they change because of all of that, which is something that's really cool. And I think that it would be awesome to see something like that in the civilians of the next Infamous game. For example, let's just say that you kill one civilian in the game, and then in some later part of that game, someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, that was my brother that you killed," and now they kind of want to fight you or something. Even though they would not have the ability to kill someone who has superpowers and stuff, that would just be so much more interesting, and it would make the city feel so much more real and alive, and it would just be so awesome. So now I will talk about having different districts in the city and what that should be like. I think that there should be a good diversity of different districts in the city, and they can have different architecture styles, and also they should feel impacted in different ways with what is happening in the story and how that will affect people who live in that district. And maybe there will be different enemy factions that have taken over different districts, and that is just a suggestion because I don't know if that'll work at all with the story that will be in this game, but if it will, then that is an idea. And if it is like that, then maybe these factions would like fight each other sometimes, like different gangs or something, just to make it feel like there are things actually going on in this city that isn't just something that you're doing, and it's actually its own thing. Also, I think that there needs to be way more things to do in the open world of this next game. I feel like, in general, the Infamous games don't have nearly as many things that you can do in their open worlds as you can do in many other open world games. One thing is for side quests. I think that they shouldn't always be set in stone, and maybe it could even be just you interacting with a civilian that turns into some sort of a mission, depending on what you do with them. And it should really just feel seamless and natural, and you shouldn't have to do the same side quest over and over either, because especially in Second Son, you just have to do the same missions over and over, and it just gets so boring, and there should definitely be way more limited repetition of side missions in the next game. And also, just for the general mission design of any missions, whether it's a story mission or a side mission, I think that there should be no more of that sort of like basic mission structure that many missions in the Infamous games tend to follow. And by this I mean that it's generally something like you have to do a certain thing a few times, like for example, you have to chase down all of the trucks with the drugs in them and then destroy the drugs and then do the little neon painting thing on it in first light and things like that, which just makes it feel really unnatural and weird. And it's really boring over time, just like doing 3 of the same objective in one mission and then doing something at the end and then it's over and then doing another one that's just like that or something. That just gets super old. For the collectibles in this game, I think that each collectible should either build upon the story or your powers, and that the collectibles really do need to make sense with the story. The blast shards in the first Infamous game did make sense because there was a big explosion in what was near the center of the city, and it sent tons of irradiated chunks of earth like all over the city, and now you can go collect them to like add more energy meter things from them, and I think that that actually makes quite a bit of sense, but that in the other Infamous games they feel really shoehorned into them to where they really should have had some other collectible, and that blast shards didn't really fit in with that. So I'm hoping that there's no more blast shards in this next one. They could do it if it makes sense to the story, but I would rather have a story that's different from past ones and not another race for blast and having that again. So now I will talk about one of the last things that I am going to talk about in this video, which is the powers. I think that the powers need to fit very well with the city, sort of like electricity fit very well with Empire City in the first Infamous game, and that these superpowers should be an interesting way of telling a story, but not the main point of the game. Also, one thing that I think Sucker Punch needs to realize is that more powers doesn't mean it's going to be a better game, and that you really don't have to top the powers from the last game to make this one a good game. And I think that for this game, maybe just focusing on the main character having just one power set would make it a lot better. There could be a complex upgrade system that lets you gain many new abilities without feeling as cluttered and as weird as it did in Infamous 2. So I would just like to have one power set that is extremely interesting and awesome all at the same time. And I think that the power should offer a more unique kind of gameplay than in most other video games. This might mean making it less of a first-person shooter and making it more of its own thing that you really haven't played anything like it in any other video game, and having some sort of a superpower that could do that would be totally awesome. So that's what I am going to say about whatever powers should be in this game. I'm not going to come up with any ideas of what the power set will be or something, because this isn't that kind of a video. I will briefly talk about the graphics to say that they really don't need to be technically impressive to make a good game, they just need to be artistically impressive. I think that probably the number one biggest thing that Second Son did wrong is that it felt like the powers and the graphics were the main points of the game that everything else was built around, when really the graphics and the gameplay in that kind of a game should just be ways of telling an awesome story. So yeah, that is what I want out of this next Infamous game. I really hope that it is mainly focused on having an awesome story and also having awesome gameplay that makes this story even better. I do want this to feel a little bit more like the first Infamous game, but I don't think they should go out of their way to make it feel like that if that's not what this game should be. And I think that if all of what I said is done perfectly in this game, and if they actually do that, then this is probably going to be my new favorite game of all time. But at the same time, I don't think that we should be too optimistic, because then we might just be majorly disappointed once this game is actually revealed, or once this game comes out, and it's not nowhere as good as what I've been saying. So, thank you guys for watching. If you want, you can leave your ideas for things that might be in the game, for what the game might be, for characters in the game, for powers, for whatever, or for like what you want to be done in this game to make it a better game. Just leave that in the comments if you'd like, and maybe in some sort of a future video I will feature those comments on something, but I really don't know right now because this game hasn't even been announced yet, and it's a long ways off. So yep, thanks for watching. I already said that, but why not say it again? Like the video if you enjoyed, and have a great day.